Quite the saga in Gainesville. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, breaking down Florida football. And of course, when you break down Florida football, you go to Gators Breakdown and David Waters. David, how you doing today?
Good, Mark. It's broken down. So
Oh my goodness.
the name fits right now.
Absolutely, it does. It was intended for another
way. Yeah,
intended for another use originally, and usually is. But here we stand. I will start with this. I don't know that there is another program in college football where the two names of the quarterback and the coach are pretty much everything that anyone is talking about. And so we'll start with the coach, of course, Billy Napier. Okay. Many people expected, especially after what we heard about Board of Trustees meeting and so forth on Sunday, that they would pull the plug and he would not be coaching this game in Mississippi State. Just your thoughts about whether it's a done deal, it's just a matter of days, or whether they're going to continue to see how this team progresses the next couple of weeks.
I don't think it's the latter, Mark. I don't think they're waiting to see if it can turn around. I think I do. If you had to ask me, I do think it will take part after this Mississippi State game. Florida has a bye week after that, so if you decide to turn the page, it's just a whole lot easier to turn the page then. I don't think there's any coming back from it, Mark. The money's raised, the $26 million buyout, the money's there. The boosters are certainly ready to move on and are have let it since the Miami game. Let it be known that hey, this isn't going to work. And then Texas A&M was just further confirmation of that. So Mark, if you had to ask me to put a timeline on it, I'd say if we were to get together early next week, Billy Napier won't be the head coach of Florida. Now we'll see. I think there's maybe he does get fired and finishes out the season. I can see that scenario at the same time, but I would not be surprised next weekend or this coming up weekend we get the word that Billy Napier would no longer be moving on as head coach for Florida starting in 2025.
Now, had we known at this point in the season Florida would be 1-2, nobody would be surprised. But at the same time, if we knew they were 1-2 and they had performed the way they did against Miami and Texas A&M and did not lose one-score games to teams that they should be competitive with, but lost in the manner that they did, this is obviously not a good look for where this program's headed. I looked at a couple different sources this week, check in with you at times, and it appears as though everything else with this program seems to be running well. And I know if you're not winning on the field, nobody cares about that. But it seems like the players respect the coach. They like him. They show up on time. They do their work. They're not getting in trouble. All those things. There doesn't seem to be a bad attitude on the field. They seem to support him. He claims, Billy Napier, that he's doing those things behind the walls that show that he's building a program. But obviously, it's got to translate to the field pretty much immediately, or he's actually probably past that line.
Yeah, Mark, there's a disconnect somewhere. Napier has said many times in the last couple of weeks, hey, whatever I see on the practice field Monday through Thursday, for whatever reason, we don't see it on Saturday. And it's a surprise to him. Well, that can be a problem in and of itself. Either he just can't identify what a good football team in the SEC looks like, or that actually is the case. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't translate on Saturdays. Either way, it's a problem. Mark, there is a good culture there. It's not a winning culture. And that to me, that's the best way to break it down. And that's all that matters. The wins and losses are all that matters in the end. And there's not a lot of players in trouble under Billy Napier. As you said, the big thing taking over for Dan Mullen was, getting the players to, want to be at Florida, enjoy being at Florida, fix parking situations, fix strength and conditioning, fix nutrition, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of those things have happened, but it just does not translate to wins on Saturday. And speaking of Saturday, it's just, Mark, I think you can just say it. If all those other things are true, it just lets you know probably how bad of a game day coach Billy Napier is. I mean, there's no feel for a game. The defense is, in his third season, bad once again. But for Florida, now going on 5 seasons of bad defensive football. He has not been able to fix that side of the ball. The offense has seemed to regress in some ways when, to me, it really shouldn't have with a returning quarterback, what you have at receiver, what you have at running back. The offensive line, much like the defense, just has gotten worse under Billy Napier. So it's not a very tough team, Mark. I think that really what takes Gator Nation off a whole lot. You can see it in the trenches versus Miami. You can see it in the trenches versus Texas A&M. So it doesn't matter how good it is behind the scenes, Mark. It just does not translate into wins and losses for Billy Napier.
Okay. There is also a line of thinking to a certain extent, and this is me just thinking on the surface, that maybe it's a little bit more than Billy Napier. If you look at the history of this program, sure, it's a highly successful program, but that's pretty much been Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. They have reached the heights of the heights, and they have pretty much been the responsibility of the entire cachet of this entire history of this program. Sure, they had some nice teams in the 80s, but basically it's been Spurrier and Meyer. And ever since Urban Meyer stepped off campus, they've made 4 coaching hires. Dan Mullen, we could have a debate as to whether he was successful. He, of course, had 3 really good seasons. They've had 4 hires. And if I've got these dates correct, Scott Strickland's been the AD since, I believe, 2016. So he's responsible for 3 of these hires. Or maybe it's just the last 2.
Yeah, he did not hire McElwain, so he hired Mullen and Napier.
Okay, so he's only had 2, and again, Mullen just had the 1 bad season, and then there were all the off-the-field things that contributed to his dismissal. But is there anything outside of just Billy Napier being the problem that could be more systemic?
I still think it starts there, Mark, because I do think there is more talent on this team. And no, don't get me wrong, it is not championship level talent. Nobody has ever stood by that, but it's better than what we've seen. But as you kind of go and mention, and kind of the litany of head coaches Florida has had, I mean, yeah, everybody wants to point to the University Athletic Association and how Florida, kind of got arrogant in the 90s with Spurrier and a little bit with Meyer as well, and just didn't really feel the need to keep up with the times. Florida fell behind in the arms race of facilities, and by the time they got their Taj Mahal facility, everybody already had it, and the page turned to NIL in transfer portal. And then Florida kind of got off, while the first collective in the country with the Gator Collective, now Florida victorious, it just there was not a lot of support by the UAA and the administration. They were slow to take hold of what NIL and how important it was going to be to build a college football roster and build a college football program. And Florida Victorious now has just gotten up to that level to be, I think, a top 10, top 15 collective in the country. But they were slow to come around on it. I still don't think a lot of the old guard has come around on just how important NIL is. They want it to be the old way, and they want to hang on to that. They'd rather have a coach that they could be buddies with and take photos with and have a yes man, and that's just not what is needed in today's college football. So yeah, it's not all Billy Napier. It is on Saturdays and what we see. That's the problem, Mark. But if Florida's ever going to reach that pinnacle of being a national championship program, it is more than just a head coach.